The night was heavy with smoke and silence. Dark clouds moved across the ruined sky, hiding the broken stars. The ground trembled with the distant march of alien machines, their metal legs digging into the dirt. In the center of the battlefield stood a deep pit, wide and endless, a place the aliens called the machine pit. It was not just a hole in the ground, it was a place of terror, where old machines slept and waited for sacrifices. The alien soldiers dragged a woman across the dirt. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide with fear, her arms chained with glowing metal. She was a widow, taken from her village because her life had no value to them anymore. To the aliens, she was only an offering, nothing more. They laughed as they pushed her closer to the pit, their voices cold and cruel. "No one returns from the machine pit," one alien hissed. "Let the old metal gods have her," another replied, their sharp teeth glinting under the faint moonlight. The woman fell to her knees, dust rising around her. She cried for mercy, but there was none. Her people had long accepted this fate. Better to sacrifice one than to anger the machines that lived below. The chains locked her to a black stone near the edge. The aliens turned away without another look. To them, she was already dead. They walked back to their ships, leaving her to the darkness and the sound of grinding metal under the ground. The woman closed her eyes, her heart racing. The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps, not the heavy steps of the aliens, not the cold crawl of machines. These steps were different, human, slower but filled with determination. From the shadows, a man appeared. His armor was broken, his rifle bent and useless. Blood stained his arm and dirt covered his face, but his eyes burned with fire. He was a human soldier, left behind after the last battle. No one expected him to survive, yet here he was, standing at the edge of the pit, staring at the chained widow. The woman's breath caught. "Go," she whispered. "The machines will come. They will kill you too." The man shook his head. "No," he said softly. "I will not leave you." She stared at him with disbelief. No one had ever spoken such words before. To save a sacrifice was to defy the aliens, and even worse, to defy the machines themselves. It was madness. The ground shook again, harder this time. From deep inside the pit came the sound of gears grinding and chains snapping. A low metallic roar echoed through the night. The machines were waking. The widow began to cry, her chains rattling as she pulled against them. "Please go," she begged. "If you stay, they will kill you." But the human stepped closer instead. His hands reached for the chains, his muscles straining. The metal glowed and burned his skin, but he did not stop. Above them, the clouds parted for a moment, letting the pale moonlight shine down. The light revealed the rising figures from the pit, tall machines with glowing red eyes, their bodies made of rusted steel and wires. They climbed from the darkness, their heavy steps shaking the earth. Their heads turned toward the human and the widow, scanning them with beams of cold light. The man pulled harder at the chains until they cracked. The woman gasped as the bindings broke free. He grabbed her hand, pulling her up. "We will run," he said, but his voice carried no fear, only determination. The widow looked at him, her heart confused. Why would a human risk his life for her, an alien widow who meant nothing to his people? The machines stepped closer, surrounding them. Their voices spoke together, like thunder rolling across the sky. "Sacrifice accepted," the machines growled. "Leave or be consumed." But the human stood firm. His broken rifle in hand, he faced them with eyes that did not look away. "I will not leave," he said, his voice steady. "She will not die tonight." The machines stopped for a moment, their glowing eyes flickering. No one had ever spoken back to them. No one had ever refused. The ground shook harder, the air filled with the sound of gears and engines. The widow held tightly to the human's arm, trembling as the machines moved closer. Their claws scraped the dirt, their shadows long and monstrous under the moon. From the depths of the pit, a new sound began to rise. It was louder, deeper, like the roar of 1,000 storms. The machines around them lowered their heads, as if something greater was about to appear. The widow's breath froze in her chest, her eyes wide with terror. The human tightened his grip on the broken rifle, his face set with iron resolve. From the pit came the voice of something ancient and powerful. "Why does this human resist?" the voice boomed. Shaking the battlefield, the widow gasped, her heart stopping at the sound. The machine stepped back, bowing slightly toward the pit, but the human did not bow. He raised his head. Standing tall before the darkness, he was only one man. broken and bleeding yet unafraid. The widow whispered in shock. "You will die." The human looked at her, his eyes calm. "Maybe," he said, "but not like this." And then the ground split open. A massive shadow rose from the pit, its glowing eyes burning brighter than fire. The true master of the machine pit had awakened. The night trembled with its arrival, and the battle for survival had begun. The earth cracked beneath the human's boots. The shadow of the great machine rose higher and higher. Blocking the pale moon, its metal frame was covered in scars of old wars, its gears grinding with ancient power. Every step it took sent tremors across the ruined battlefield, shaking the stones loose and making the widow stumble. The human pulled her closer, holding her steady. He had no weapon strong enough to fight such a monster, only courage and the broken rifle in his hands. The widow looked at him with wide eyes, her voice shaking. "No one fights them, not even my people, not even the strongest." But the human's gaze never wavered. "Then I will be the first," he said. The smaller machines circled around them like wolves, their red eyes glowing, their claws scraping sparks against the dirt. They waited for the command of the greater one, the war engine that towered above them all. The widow clung to the human's arm, her breath shallow, her heart racing with terror. She had seen many sacrifices, she had watched many be taken, but never had she seen someone refuse. This was madness, yet in her chest, something strange began to stir. Hope. The giant machine lowered its head, its glowing eyes locking on the human. "Human," it thundered, its voice echoing across the battlefield. "Leave the sacrifice, or be destroyed." The air burned with the sound of its words, a storm of metal and rage. But the human lifted his rifle and pointed it at the machine, though the weapon was bent and useless. "I will not leave," he shouted, his voice steady against the roar. "If you want her, you must go through me," the widow gasped, pulling at his arm. "You cannot fight them. They will crush you." But the human only shook his head. Better to fall fighting than to run. The smaller machines leapt forward first, their bodies fast and sharp like blades. The human swung the broken rifle like a club, smashing the head of the first one, sparks exploding into the night. The second lunged, but he rolled aside, pulling the widow with him, the claws tearing through the stone where they had stood. He grabbed a shard of metal from the ground and stabbed it into the machine's glowing eye. It screamed, a sound of tearing iron. Before collapsing in the dirt, the widow stared in shock. She had never seen such fury, such defiance. The machines were built to kill, yet this human fought them with nothing but scraps and will. Her heart raced not with fear but with awe. The giant war engine watched in silence, its gears grinding slowly. The smaller machines hesitated now, their glowing eyes flickering with something like confusion. They had never faced resistance during the sacrifices, never seen anyone fight for one marked for death. The human stood tall, blood running down his arm, chest heaving with breath. Yet his eyes burned brighter than the machine's lights. The widow whispered, "Why do you fight for me? I am nothing to you." A widow with no worth? The human turned to her, his voice rough but certain. "Because no life is nothing." The words struck her like lightning. Simple yet powerful, more powerful than all the cruel laws of her people. She looked at him not as a madman, but as something different, something stronger. The machines stepped back for a moment, their heads turning as if waiting. Then the war engine's voice boomed again. "Strange human, you do not run, you do not bow." "Why?" The ground shook with its question. The widow trembled, but the human raised his voice. "Because life is not for sacrifice." The words hung in the air. Defiant, dangerous. The machine's eyes flickered red and gold, their gears grinding louder. The widow clutched his hand, her heart pounding with fear of what would come. The aliens, watching from their distant ship, laughed at the sight. "To fight the machines is foolishness," one hissed. "He will die screaming and the widow will still be taken." But another frowned, his eyes narrowing. "Or maybe not. These machines hesitate." The widow heard the echo of the aliens' laughter carried by the wind. She felt the heavy silence of the machines, their hesitation strange, unnatural, and she realized something. This human had already done what no one else had. He had made the machines pause. The war engine's head lifted, its eyes glowing brighter. It spoke again, slower this time, almost curious. "You resist. You protect. You fight." Its voice thundered like an ancient storm, shaking the pit itself. "Human, you are different," the widow gasped, her hand gripping the human's arm tighter. Never before had the machines spoken more than commands. Never before had they questioned. Something was changing, something dangerous. The human did not move, his chest rising and falling. His eyes locked on the giant machine, he stood unbroken, a shadow of defiance against the towering war engine. The widow whispered, "What if they accept you? What if they take you as their servant?" The man shook his head slowly, his jaw tight. "I will never serve." The ground trembled as the pit rumbled deeper. From the shadows below came new sounds, chains snapping, metal grinding. The machines around them stepped back, their heads bowing as the war engine raised its voice. "If you will not leave and you will not serve, then you will be tested." The widow froze, her heart stopping at the words. She knew the test meant only one thing, death. The war engine's massive claws reached toward the pit. Tearing open the earth, from below new machines began to rise. Larger, sharper, more deadly than before. Their eyes glowed like fire, their bodies built for war, not ritual. The widow pulled at the human's arm in terror. "Please run! They will kill you now." But the human stood his ground, his eyes burning with unshakable fire. He raised the broken rifle again, his voice loud and steady. "Then let the test begin." The night shook with the roar of machines, the air burning with sparks and fire. The widow clung to him, torn between terror and awe for the first time. She wondered, maybe this human was not only fighting for her life, maybe he was fighting for something greater, something that could change everything. And as the new machines surrounded them, the war engine's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Then face the trial of the pit, human." The ground was alive with the roar of machines. The pit shook as new forms rose from the darkness, warriors of steel, with claws like blades and glowing eyes that cut through the smoke. The widow clung to the human's arm. Her breath short, her heart pounding, she whispered, "This is the trial of the pit. No one survives this." Not even the strongest, but the human stood tall, his broken rifle in hand, his eyes fixed on the monsters that surrounded them. The first machine lunged forward, its claws raised high. The human pulled the widow aside, the claws smashing into the stone where they had stood. Dust and sparks flew into the air. The human swung his rifle like a hammer, striking the machine's leg, making it stumble before it could rise. He grabbed another shard of metal from the ground and jammed it into the glowing joint of its neck. The machine screeched, sparks flying as it collapsed. The other machines closed in, faster, sharper, deadlier. But the human did not run. He moved with desperation and courage, striking, dodging, pulling the widow away from every blow. Each attack left him bleeding, his body torn by cuts. But his spirit refused to break. The widow could not believe what she was seeing. For the first time in her life, someone stood against the trial. Someone did not kneel, did not scream, did not beg. The war engine watched in silence, its massive head tilted. Its voice rolled across the battlefield like thunder. "Human, why do you resist?" The question was not a command, not a threat, but a true question. The widow froze, her eyes wide in shock. The machines never asked, they only demanded. They only consumed, but now, they were asking. The human breathed hard, his chest rising and falling. Blood ran down his arm, but his voice was steady. "Because life is not yours to take." The machines fell silent, their glowing eyes flickering as if trying to process the meaning of his words. The widow trembled, staring at him. His answer was simple. Yet it carried more weight than all the speeches of her leaders. It was not about power, not about victory, it was about life itself. The war engine lowered its head closer, its glowing eyes burning like fire. "You fight for one who is not your kind," it said, its voice shaking the earth. The widow's heart tightened. It was true, she was alien. She was a widow cast aside by her people. Yet this human risked everything for her. The human's reply came without hesitation. "Because no one should be left alone to die." The widow's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembling, she could not understand it. Not fully, but she felt it deep inside. This was more than madness. This was something powerful, something dangerous. The machines shifted uneasily, their claws scraping the ground, their eyes flickering between red and gold. They had no code for this defiance, no memory of it in their endless history of rituals. The aliens, watching from their ships above, began to murmur among themselves. "He speaks to them," one sneered. "He dares to answer the pit," another leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "The machines do not kill him. They listen." Fear crept into their voices. For if the machines listened to a human, what else could change? The war engine's voice thundered again. Human, we were made to consume, to test, to judge. Do you defy your own death? The human stood straight, his body shaking from pain, but his voice was firm. I defy what should never have been. The widow looked at him with awe. In that moment, he was no longer just a broken soldier. He was something greater. He was a challenge to the order of the universe. The machines moved again, circling him slowly. But their attacks had stopped. They were no longer only predators, they were curious, the widow whispered. They do not know what to do. Her voice was filled with fear and wonder. For the first time in history, the machines of the pit hesitated. The war engine's eyes glowed brighter, its voice dropping lower, almost like a growl. If you will not flee, if you will not kneel, then speak, what are you? The human raised his head, his voice calm despite the fire around him. I am human. I am free. The words echoed across the battlefield. The machines paused, their claws frozen mid-motion, their eyes dimming and brightening again. The widow shivered, holding her breath. It was as if the words carried a power even machines could not ignore. From deep in the pit, another voice stirred. It was not the war engine, not the smaller machines, it was older, deeper. A voice like the grinding of mountains, it whispered. Free. The machines around them trembled, their metal bodies rattling as if the word had shaken something inside them. The widow gasped, pulling close to the human. You have awakened something, something even they fear. The war engine roared, trying to drown out the whisper. Silence. The trial is not complete. The ground split wider. Flames and smoke rising as chains snapped from below. Something vast moved in the shadows of the pit. The widow felt her legs weaken, her heart ready to stop, she whispered. What else sleeps down there? The human gripped her hand tightly, his eyes locked on the pit. Whatever was coming, he would face it, just as he had faced everything else. The war engine's voice thundered one last command, shaking the sky. Then you will face the Titan. The widow's breath caught in her throat. The Titan, the greatest of all the machines, the monster of legends, the one even aliens feared to wake, and now, because of the human's defiance, it was rising. The ground split wide. The night filled with fire and thunder. From the depths of the pit, two colossal hands of steel gripped the edge, pulling up a body taller than mountains. Its eyes lit the battlefield like suns, its voice a roar of storms. The widow fell to her knees in terror. The human stood firm, his broken weapon in hand, his eyes blazing with fire. The Titan had awakened, and the question still echoed in the air. Why does this human resist? The Titan's roar shook the battlefield like thunder. The ground split wide, fire and smoke pouring into the night. The widow trembled, clutching the human's arm, her knees weak beneath her. The machines around them bowed low to the rising giant, their glowing eyes dimming in respect. But the human did not bow. He pulled the widow close, his voice sharp and quick. We run! Without another word, he dragged her across the broken ground behind them. The Titan's massive frame rose higher, its shadow covering the battlefield. Its voice boomed like storms. You cannot run. Sacrifice belongs to us. The widow's heart pounded, her breath ragged as she stumbled beside the human. Her people had always given up, always accepted the will of the machines, yet this human refused, pulling her forward as if even the Titan itself could not make him kneel. The earth shook with each step of the giant machine. Smaller machines leapt from the pit to block their path, claws raised high. The human grabbed a burning shard of metal from the ground, swinging it like a blade. Sparks exploded as he struck one in the head. The creature collapsing in fire, another lunged, but he rolled aside. Pulling the widow with him, she gasped, her chest tight. But for the first time, she did not beg him to flee alone. She held on tighter, running beside him. The chase began. Across the ruins they ran, through shattered stone and twisted metal. The alien ships above circled like vultures, their cruel laughter echoing down through the night. Let him run, one hissed. The Titan will crush them soon enough. But another voice spoke with unease. And if it does not, if the machines truly begin to question? Silence followed that thought. Silence filled with fear. The widow's chains clattered as she ran, still half broken, still heavy. The human paused only long enough to strike them with his burning shard. Snapping them loose, she gasped in relief, her wrists raw and bleeding but finally free. She looked at him, her voice trembling. Why do you do this? Why not save yourself? He glanced at her, his face grim but steady. Because your life matters, even if they say it does not. Her breath caught, her heart confused. No one in her life had ever spoken such words. She had been a wife once, a widow now, a sacrifice later. Her worth was gone, until this human decided it was not. The thought gave her strength and she began to run faster. Not dragged, but running beside him. The ground shook again as the Titan's voice thundered. "Run, human, run until the world ends. We will always find you." Its massive arm swung down, smashing into the ruins where they had stood seconds before. Stone and fire erupted into the night. The human shielded the widow with his body, pulling her through the smoke. Her eyes widened as she looked back at the mountain of steel rising behind them. Yet even in terror, she felt something else. She felt alive. Hours passed like minutes as they ran through the wasteland. The machines followed, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. The widow stumbled many times, but each time the human pulled her up, never letting go. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she pushed forward, driven by his unshakable will. At last, they reached the edge of the battlefield, where the ruins gave way to twisted forests of black stone and ash. The human slowed, pulling her into the shadows. The machines spread out behind them, searching, their voices cold and sharp. "Find them. No one escapes the pit." The widow pressed close to him. Her breath loud in the silence, he raised a finger to his lips, his eyes scanning the dark together. They moved deeper into the forest, hidden by shadows and smoke. But safety was an illusion. High above, the alien ships circled, their searchlights cutting through the trees. The widow looked up, her voice a whisper. "They will not stop. They will chase us until the end." The human nodded, his voice low. "Then we make the hunt costly." As they moved deeper, he began to set traps, simple tricks, sharp stones hidden under ash, burning branches balanced on ruins, wires pulled from broken machines. The widow watched, confused at first, then amazed. Her people had never fought back like this, never used the land itself as a weapon. Yet this human turned every broken piece of the world into a shield, a blade, a trap. When a small machine followed too close, it stepped into one of his snares, a stone falling and crushing its head. The widow gasped, covering her mouth. The human only nodded. "Every step we take, we make them pay." Through the long night they fought and fled. Each trap destroyed another pursuer. Each ambush bought them another breath. The widow found herself helping him, gathering sharp stones, carrying branches. Her fear did not vanish, but it turned into something new. Resolve. For the first time in her life, she was not waiting for death. She was fighting to live. But the hunt was not over. From the skies above, the alien overlord's voice echoed down, sharp and cruel. "If the human survives until dawn, unleash the Titan fully. Let no stone remain." The widow's heart froze. The Titan was already awake, already hunting. But now the overlord promised destruction beyond imagining. The human looked at her, his face covered in blood and ash, his voice steady. "We survive until dawn." She stared at him, shaking. "How?" "The Titan will destroy everything." He tightened his grip on her hand, his eyes unshakable. "Then we destroy the Titan first." The widow gasped, her heart pounding. The thought was madness. More than madness, it was impossible. Yet as she looked into his eyes, she believed, even if only for a moment, for in his gaze she saw something greater than fear, greater than death. She saw defiance, and as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the Titan's massive form moved through the trees. Its eyes burned like suns, its voice a roar that shook the heavens. "Human, your trial ends now," it thundered. The widow held her breath. Gripping the human's arm, the hunt was over. The true battle was about to begin. The forest burned with the Titan's steps. Every tree shattered, every stone cracked. Every shadow trembled when the giant moved. The widow clung to the human's arm, her eyes wide with terror. The Titan's voice rumbled like storms. "There is no escape. No dawn without death." The human stood in the ash, his chest rising and falling with heavy breath. His weapon was nothing, his body broken. But his will burned brighter than the Titan's fire. The smaller machines stalked them through the smoke, their claws glinting, their eyes glowing red. The widow whispered, "They will not stop. They will tear us apart." But before the machines could strike, something strange happened. From the shadows came a sound, not the roar of pursuit, but the grinding of gears in hesitation. One machine stepped forward, its red eyes flickering. It did not attack. It looked at the human, and in a voice of broken static it spoke. "Why do you resist?" The widow froze, her breath caught in her chest. The human tightened his grip on his broken rifle, but did not swing. He answered with the same fire in his voice. "Because life matters." The machine paused, its claws lowering. Behind it, another stepped out, its eyes also flickering between red and gold, then another and another, until a small circle of machines stood apart from the rest. The widow trembled, whispering, "They question. They are changing." Her people had always said the machines could not change. They only obeyed their code. But here they stood, caught between orders and something new. The Titan roared, its massive arm smashing the ground. "Obey the code. Destroy the human." The smaller machines shook, their gears grinding as if torn between two masters. The human raised his voice, sharp and steady. "You are not bound. You can choose." The words hung in the smoke like fire. The widow's eyes widened, her heart racing. Could machines choose? Could they be more than weapons of sacrifice? One of the machines stepped closer to the human, its voice low and heavy. "If we choose, we are forsaken." The human nodded without fear. "Then be forsaken with me." The widow gasped, her eyes filling with awe. This was not only defiance, this was rebellion. The rogue machines lowered their claws, turning their eyes from red to a dim golden light. The Titan roared again, furious. "Traitors! You defy the code." Its massive frame leaned forward, fire burning in its chest, but the rogue machines moved, placing themselves between the Titan and the human. The widow could not believe what she saw. Machines protecting a human? Machines shielding an alien widow. It was something her people had never imagined. The alien overlords above watched from their ships, their voices sharp with fear. "This is impossible," one hissed. "The pit has no rebels," another snarled. "If machines can question, then the order will break. Everything will collapse," they argued in panic. But deep in their hearts they knew a new danger had been born. Not the human's weapon, not his strength, but his defiance. The night burned with battle. The loyal machines charged forward, their claws tearing through ash and stone. The rogue machines clashed with them, sparks exploding, metal tearing against metal. The human and widow stood at the center, watching as the forest turned into a storm of steel. The widow whispered, "You changed them? You broke their chains." The human shook his head, his voice low. "No, they broke their own. I only showed them the way." The Titan stepped forward, each movement shaking the land. Its voice thundered. "You think rebels can save you? You think traitors can stand against me?" Its massive hand swung down, crushing two rogue machines in an instant. The widow cried out, but the machines did not retreat. They held their ground, even against the monster that had ruled the pit for ages. The human shouted, "Stand together, and even titans fall." The widow felt something awaken inside her. For the first time, she no longer saw the human as a stranger. He was something more, a spark of freedom in a world of chains. She turned to the machines, her voice trembling but strong. "Fight not as slaves. Fight as beings of your own will." The machines paused, their golden eyes flickering brighter at her words. The Titan roared louder, furious that even the widow now resisted. The battlefield became chaos. Metal clashed against metal, fire tore through the trees. The ground split under the weight of the Titan. The human fought side by side with the widow, pulling her from danger, striking at weak points of enemy machines. The rogue machines shielded them, their bodies breaking under the Titan's rage, but they did not fall back. Each moment bought another breath, another chance. The aliens in the sky began to grow desperate. "Unleash everything," one shouted. "Burn the land, burn the machines." "Burn them all," another warned. "If we destroy them now, the Titan may fall with them." But the overlord snarled, "Better to lose the Titan than to lose control." The widow heard the thunder of alien ships charging their weapons above. She looked at the human in fear. "They will destroy us all." The human's eyes hardened, his jaw set. "Then we strike first." He turned to the rogue machines, his voice loud and commanding. "If you want to live free, then fight with us not only against the Titan, but against the aliens who chained you." The machines growled, their golden eyes burning brighter. One by one they answered in broken voices. "We fight." The Titan's roar shook the heavens. The aliens' weapons charged in the skies. The widow's hand tightened around the humans, her voice trembling. "This is madness." The human looked back at her, his eyes filled with fire. No, this is freedom. And as dawn's light broke through the smoke, the battle turned. Human, widow, and rogue machines stood together. The Titan raised its colossal arm for one final strike. The alien ships above aimed their weapons to burn the ground. And in that single moment, the fate of all three, alien, machine, and human, hung in the balance. The morning sky turned black as the Titan rose in full. Its body was taller than mountains, its arms wide as rivers, its chest burning with fire like a second sun. Each step cracked the ground and sent shockwaves through the earth. The widow clung to the human's side, trembling as she stared at the giant. Her voice was barely a whisper. Nothing can fight that. The rogue machines formed a line before the human and widow, their golden eyes glowing with defiance. Their voices rumbled together. We fight. The Titan's laughter shook the ruins. You are broken tools, forsaken metal. Do you think you can stand against me? The human raised his voice, steady and sharp. Even mountains fall when enough hands push. The Titan swung its colossal arm, crushing trees, stone, and two rogue machines in one blow. The widow cried out, covering her mouth. But the human pulled her close, whispering, "Don't look. Keep moving." The survivors regrouped, claws sparking, gears grinding. They charged at the Titan's legs, slashing and striking with all their strength. But their blows were like raindrops against iron. The human watched, his eyes narrowing. He was not looking at the Titan's size, but its movements. He studied the joints, the gears, the cracks in its chest where fire bled through. He whispered to the widow, "Even the strongest machine has a weakness." She stared at him in disbelief. "You plan to fight it," he nodded. "No, I plan to bring it down," the Titan roared, stomping the ground, sending rogue machines flying. One landed broken at the human's feet, its golden eye dimming. Before it went dark, it whispered, "Core, inside chest. Fireheart." The human's jaw tightened, his mind racing. He looked at the widow. "We must strike its heart." But how could two fragile bodies reach the chest of a mountain? The Titan leaned forward, its massive hand sweeping across the battlefield. The human shouted, "Move!" pulling the widow as stone and fire erupted behind them. The alien ships above cheered, their overlord's voice echoing, "Crush them, end this rebellion. Let none survive." The widow's fear burned into anger. She looked up at the sky, her voice shaking but strong. "They want us to give up, but we will not." Her words gave strength to the rogue machines still standing. They regrouped and attacked again, this time not with claws but with sacrifice. They hurled themselves at the Titan's legs, forcing its steps to slow. The Titan roared, swatting them away like insects, but every second they bought was another chance. The human turned to the widow, his eyes fierce. "We climb," she gasped. "Climb that. It will kill us before we reach its chest." He gripped her shoulders, his voice steady. "Then we climb faster than it can kill." The Titan bent low, its burning eyes fixed on them. Its voice thundered, "You dare climb me? You dare touch the Titan," the human shouted back. "I dare everything you fear." With that, he ran toward the giant, pulling the widow with him. The rogue machines opened a path, shielding them as long as they could. They reached the Titan's foot, massive as a hill. The human leapt, grabbing broken metal along its leg, hauling himself upward. The widow followed, her hands trembling, but her will stronger than her fear. Above them, the Titan shook. Trying to throw them off, the human shouted, "Hold on," as the world spun around them. Every movement was a storm, every shake a quake. Yet still they climbed, higher and higher. The alien ships fired down beams of fire, trying to strike them. But the Titan roared, "Do not touch me, the trial is mine." Even the overlords hesitated, their fear of the Titan greater than their hate for the human. At last they reached the Titan's chest. Its fireheart glowed through cracks in the armor, a storm of light and heat. The widow's face burned from the heat, her voice weak. "How can we break it?" The human pulled a small explosive from his belt, the last of his weapons. His voice was calm. "This will not kill it, but it will open the way." The Titan sensed them, its voice booming in rage. "Insects, you cannot touch my heart." Its massive hand rose to crush them. The human shouted, "Now," and hurled the explosive into the crack. The blast shook the giant, flames bursting from its chest. The Titan staggered, roaring in fury. The widow screamed as the shockwave nearly threw them off. The human held her with one hand, clinging to the broken armor with the other. The Fireheart was wounded, glowing brighter, unstable. The Titan's voice thundered, filled with pain. "You dare wound me." The human's chest heaved, his strength fading but his voice steady. "You can bleed, and if you can bleed, you can fall." The rogue machines below saw the wound, their golden eyes burning with hope. They roared together. The Titan bleeds, and charged with renewed fury. They struck at the weakened joints, forcing the giant to stumble. The aliens above cried out in anger, their control slipping. The Overlord shouted, "Destroy them all! Burn the land," but his own soldiers hesitated, their fear of the Titan's fall spreading through their ranks. The widow clung to the human, her voice breaking. "We cannot hold on much longer." He looked at her, his eyes blazing. "Then we finish this before we fall." The Titan's massive hand rose again, its claws glowing red-hot. The ground shook with the power of its rage. The human's grip slipped, his body weak, yet his eyes never lost their fire. He whispered to the widow, "If I fall, you must strike again, promise me." Her tears burned her face, but she nodded, her voice trembling. "I promise." And then the Titan roared louder than ever, its fire heart blazing like a sun ready to burst. The battlefield froze in silence. Machines and aliens watching, the moment of judgment had come. Would the Titan crush them, or would their defiance break the code of ages? The Titan's claws rose high above the battlefield. Glowing red-hot, the earth shook, the skies trembled. The widow clung to the human as the giant prepared to crush them both. The fire heart inside the Titan's chest blazed like a sun, unstable cracking, spilling light through broken steel. Every machine bowed low in fear. Every alien in the skies watched with hungry eyes. This was the end, or so they believed. The Titan's voice thundered, shaking the air. "Your defiance ends here, human. You cannot break what was built to rule." The widow's breath caught in her throat, her body trembling, yet her heart refused to give in. The human, broken and bleeding, lifted his head, his eyes blazing. His voice was steady, louder than the roar. "Then I will not break you, I will unmake you." With those words, he leapt forward, dragging the widow with him onto the Titan's chest. His hands clung to broken armor, his eyes fixed on the glowing heart within. The Titan's claws swept down, but too slow. The widow gasped. "We will die." The human's voice was firm. "Then we die free." He pulled from his belt the last charge he carried, a small but powerful explosive. The widow's eyes widened in horror. "If you ignite it here, it will destroy us too." The human's jaw tightened, his voice soft but unshakable. "Freedom always costs." Tears burned her eyes, yet she gripped his arm tighter, refusing to let go. "If you fall," she whispered. "I fall with you." The Titan roared in fury, its voice shaking the mountains. "You cannot win, you are nothing but flesh. Fragile and weak," the human shouted back. "And yet I stand against you." His voice cut like a blade, carrying across the battlefield. The rogue machines froze, their golden eyes brightening. The aliens above went silent, their laughter gone, their fear growing. The human pressed the charge into the crack of the fire heart. The Titan's eyes widened, the first flicker of fear passing through its burning gaze. It roared, trying to shake him off. The widow clung to him with all her strength, anchoring him as the world shook. The explosive sank into the fire, the countdown ticking with a low hum. The human turned to her, his voice quiet even in the storm. "When it breaks, hold tight, do not let go." She shook her head, tears falling. "I will not let you go, not now, not ever." Their hands locked together, human and alien widow united in defiance. The charge exploded. Light tore through the Titan's chest, brighter than the sun. The shockwave thundered across the battlefield, throwing machines to the ground, shattering alien ships in the sky. The Titan staggered, its massive body burning, its roar filled with pain. "Impossible. I am eternal," the human shouted over the storm. "Nothing eternal stands against the will to be free." The Titan fell to its knees, the earth breaking beneath its weight. Its fire heart cracked wide, spilling light like blood. The rogue machine surged forward, striking its joints, tearing open the wounds. The widow screamed with all her strength, "Now! Strike together!" Her voice carried across the battlefield like fire. The machines roared in unison, their golden eyes blazing for the first time. They did not obey the code, they obeyed their own will. Together they struck, and the Titan collapsed. Its colossal frame crumbled into the pit it once ruled, its fire heart bursting into fragments of light. The sky turned red with its final scream, then silence fell. The widow gasped, her body trembling as she clung to the human. He was weak, his breath shallow, his body nearly broken, but he was alive. And more than alive, he had won. The aliens above screamed in rage, their overlord's voice trembling with fury. This cannot be. The code cannot break. But even their own soldiers hesitated, fear spreading through their ranks. They had seen the impossible, machines rebelling, a titan falling, a human defying them all. For the first time, the overlords knew they were not untouchable. The widow stood, her chains broken, her voice steady. No more sacrifices. She raised her hand to the rogue machines. We will not bow, not to machines, not to aliens, not to anyone. The human leaned against her, his voice soft but fierce. We live free, or not at all. The rogue machines bowed, not in obedience, but in respect. Their golden eyes glowed brighter, voices rumbling. Free, the widow's heart swelled, tears falling down her face. Her people had always lived in chains, but now she saw the truth. Freedom was not given, it was taken. And it had begun with one human who refused to leave. The battlefield lay silent, the titan gone, the overlords retreating in fear. The widow looked at the human, whispering, You should not have been here. Yet you changed everything. He looked at her, tired but smiling faintly. Sometimes it takes an outsider to show the truth. The rising sun broke through the clouds, lighting the ruins with golden fire. The widow stood tall beside the human, their hands still joined. Around them, the rogue machines gathered. No longer hunters, no longer slaves. They were something new, something unbound, and in that moment, human and alien widow, machine and flesh, all stood together as equals. The story of the pit was over, but a new story had begun. The story of defiance, of freedom, of a single human who proved that even in the darkest place, courage could change the universe.